people don't achieve excellence once.
Challenges are a part of the journey.
How have you done that basically 4 times?
There will be points when you will feel low. There will be points where you feel nobody is helping you. It's a lonely world. Tough situations won't last, but tough founders will.
Welcome to the next episode of the Entrepreneurial Excellence Podcast. It is with lots and lots of pleasure. Shreesha is a serial entrepreneur who's built and scaled multiple startups across various industries. He successfully exited 2 of them in pretty big companies. He's a knack for identifying each industry, moving fast, and successfully exiting to the point where his investors keep backing you and keep wanting to back you, right? You're one of those entrepreneurs that investors will just keep saying, yeah, I'm in no matter what. You clearly figure something out to scaling and exiting. And so I want to talk about like what that secret is. But as mentioned, Shreesha Ramdas has worn every hat in the startup world, from founder, advisor to investor. He co-founded Lead4mix, which scaled into a category-defining marketing automation platform, and then steered it through acquisition by Cloud, which was later then acquired by SAP. So a variety of jumps there. He held leadership roles at both Cloud and Medallia, where he helped scale culture, systems, and growth inside a pretty high-performing enterprise team. And now you're back to building again as CEO and co-founder of Lumber, which is an all-in-one SaaS workforce platform purpose-built for SMB construction contractors, which seems very niche, but as we've talked about it more, is actually a very big market and really an unsolved one. But beyond this impressive resume of all these other things you've done, you're also really well known for your startup fitness, quote unquote, startup fitness framework. So how do we build startups that last? What did you learn after selling your companies and starting over again in completely different industries? Shreesha Ramdas is here to tell us all these secrets. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks for the intro. And we talked about getting on the podcast for the second time. I think some ways it defines a startup founder: persistence. We need to stay we need to stay strong, and we need to be persistent to get things accomplished. And that's what we are doing today.
That is exactly right. You just got to stick with it. I think to me, certainly one of the secrets is just sticking around. So many founders they quit the moment they face any adversity. And even the small thing of like, got to just reschedule because the program we're using to record was broken. So before we get too deep in a lot of different questions, as you know, I like to ask everyone when we kick things off, what does entrepreneurial excellence mean to you? How do you define quote unquote excellence as an entrepreneur?
First of all, to be a founder, I think that itself is a blessing. How many people get to pursue what they appreciate, what they like, where their passion exists. So being an entrepreneur itself should not be taken for granted. We should commit to staying strong and staying on the course to build a great company. Entrepreneur excellence for me, Adam, means taking the whole ecosystem forward. Building an industry is an awesome thing. It's about carrying the legacy forward. Bringing win to all the stakeholders involved is again an important thing that contributes towards the entrepreneur excellence. When I say bringing the ecosystem together and putting them in a position to win, it means your stakeholders, your investors, your partners who feel your success, your employees, they are your family, right? Getting them to win, getting them to feel the excitement of building a large-scale company is massive. And then, taking the whole legacy forward in terms of moving an industry forward, right? Contributing to the industry's growth, bringing innovation to the industry. All of that contribute towards entrepreneur excellence.
All that sounds great. I mean, it's hard to disagree with any of that. How do you actually do that, right? It's one thing to say, I mean, you and I both know dozens, if not thousands, of failed founders who were entrepreneurs who wanted to do the things you just said, but failed for various reasons. And none of these people lacked ambition or lacked intelligence, right? These were smart, highly focused individuals, and yet they still failed to do any of the things that you just said. So how do people do that? Like, walk us through maybe your own experience. Like, how have you done this? Basically, let's call it 3, almost 4 times as part of the founding team, if we include that. How have you done that basically 4 times where you've essentially achieved excellence? Like, most people don't achieve excellence once. You've done it almost 4 times.
I want to start with saying that with every startup that I've done, I have grown as a founder, and we can talk about lessons that I've carried from each startup and how all of them have contributed to what I'm today. But you had a great question or great point that you made is that a lot of founders fail. And I think founders who want to succeed, one thing that they must understand is you need to be patient, you need to be persistent, you need to banish all negative thoughts. You need to first believe that the passion that you're pursuing will succeed, right? It will pave way for great things to happen. You have to have that resolve in you that you're going to build that company, because challenges are a part of the journey. There will be points when you will feel low, there will be points when you will feel that the problem is unsurmountable, and there will be points where you feel nobody is helping you. It's a lonely world. That's part and parcel of the journey, and founders need to understand that tough situations won't last, but tough founders will. And so that's where the resolution is really important, Adam.
I love that. Tough situations won't last, but tough founders sort of will stick around. I like that. But how do you just really think then your secret in some ways is that you were just maybe insanely positive? Like, and I say insane on purpose, right? That you are so positive even when the evidence would say otherwise. Is that like one of your secrets that you just say, Elon Musk, of course, is sort of famous. People say, hey, you can't land a rocket again. He was like, no, you're insane. I think we can do it. Even though there was lots of reasons not to believe it. Are you sort of that same founder saying, you know what, like, I know we can go do this, even though it's never been done before. And you just, despite all the negative setbacks, you never let yourself waver in your belief.
Adam, you caught on to the right thing. Every founder have their own approach. As you said, Elon Musk has his approach. He's a genius and he knows how to get people to think about things in a first principle way. My secret is definitely unbridled enthusiasm, positivity, optimism. I think it was about 10 years ago I decided to wear smile always and in any situation, right? And I decided, positivity also brings a lot of patience there, right? They go hand in hand. And so any situation, I'm like, this shall pass too, right? That's a thought in my thing. But what is important is that we put in the hard work, right? The results will follow, the outcomes will happen. We should not give up hope. And so that's, again, what I tell my team, that there are a lot of pessimists who do a great job, but at Lumber, we are a bunch of optimists. We have to do what has never been attempted in the construction or other regulated industries. We have to make compliance a non-issue. And that's the mission, vision we are after. And every day we need to work hard and make a difference. And eventually we'll start seeing paving mountains, paving the way for you. Right?
How do you convince your team to really get behind that focus, right? It's most people, for better or worse, I find that most people end up taking a job because they need a job. You want people, of course, who are really excited and energized by what you're building. But in many cases, even if they say they are, they're still there in the end because they need a job and a role. How do you get your teams truly behind this positive vision, even though you're like, hey, like, we're not growing as fast as we want. We missed out on the deal we didn't get. There's a million things that happen that can seem depressing. How do you keep that mindset up? Or what do you do as a leader to either hire the right people or to keep that mentality, that optimistic focus?
Yeah. Adam, one thing to understand is that what's the difference between a good day and a bad day?
Great question. What is it?
The difference is actually that in a good day, three positive things, three things that are good, that are positive for you, are contributing in some ways, happen. And two things, negative things happen. So three good things happen, two negative things happen. What's the difference between a bad day? In a bad day, three negative things, bad things happen, and two good things happen. But what happens is, as humans, we are anxious about the negative things that happen, and we often overlook the good things that happen. So in a bad day, what I do is I remind my team and myself, to look at the two positive things that have happened, two things that have carried the momentum forward, remind them, and that brings the mood up.
Yep.
Right. And second thing is, I keep telling my team that making an effort is more important. Failures are okay as long as you don't repeat it.
Yep.
Learn from your failures. Use your failures as an important tutorial on how to improve, how to do things better. That's really important. And then you talked about hiring. Again, when you are building an organization, you are creating a culture. That culture should reflect who you are. And one way of reinforcing the culture is hiring the right people who carry your vision and how you think forward. And so making sure your interview tactics have those questions that brings out the attributes of the people you're hiring. And if the attributes are in line with your culture, then you should hire. And the other thing, Adam, this is again a lesson that I've learned over my startups, is that don't look for candidates in the last minute. Try to anticipate your hiring needs way in advance so that you can start dating those candidates. That applies for the positions that I'm bringing on board who will report to me. And I encourage all my managers also to do the same, right? Anticipate the needs, start dating the candidates so that you can understand their culture. And at Lumber, we are all about optimism, positivity. So that's an important thing to understand about the candidate. And one way of getting that out of the candidate is to ask, tell us about your childhood. While growing up, what were the influences that you had? Who were your influencers? Who do you think are your mentors? Who do you look up to? Who do you derive inspiration from? All of that brings out the attribute side of the equation.
Fair enough. How do you go about it? I want to talk more about like all your history, but before we get there, just briefly, how do you create this culture? I understand the things you're telling the team, but how do you actually create this on a day-to-day basis? Like what's the nitty-gritty of like your day-to-day? Are you sending like positive affirmations in your company Slack channel every day? What are you doing to create this? And by the way, I just want to let the audience know as well. Shreesha, like he's founded 4 different companies or been part of the founding team for at least 4 different companies in all different industries. So you're doing this in all different areas that you don't necessarily have knowledge in. It's not like you're coming into a space with lumber is a great example. You're not necessarily someone who's worked in the construction industry your entire career and said this needs to be solved. You're still figuring out how to do it and yet doing it successfully. And that's, to me, one of the key secrets to you and what I really want to unlock during this episode is how do you do this in new industries every time? But part of it, once again, we're not talking about your industry, we're talking about culture. So walk me through, like, what do you do on a day-to-day basis to inculcate that cultural mindset of a good day versus a bad day, or, always one step forward and even with mistakes? What are you doing like literally day to day to make this happen?
Yeah, Adam. So when we started Lumber, again, based on experiences I've had, I have realized the importance of codifying the culture. And how we codified the culture at Lumber is we use the acronym EOE. The first alphabet E stands for energy. So at Lumber, bring your positive attitude, bring that optimism, bring that attitude that we are here to trailblaze. And then the second alphabet O stands for ownership. Have the ownership mindset. There's no adult supervision. Nobody is looking over your shoulders, micromanaging you. You have to take the ball and run with it. And the last alphabet, which is really, really important, is experimental. You have to be experimental, run different experiments. Don't worry about failures. Let data guide you, right? And I've really, you talked about reinforcing the culture at every all hands, every leadership meeting, in my general channel on Slack. I keep reminding people about our culture, EOE. So that was how we started, and that was the main thing that I reinforced in our town hall meetings and all at Lumber. Just recently, I've added one more thing to that, and I've borrowed Frank Slootman, the founder of Snowflake, his main mantra, which is insanely great. And I've rallied the team to be saying, Now we will aim to be insanely great, which means mediocrity will not be tolerated, right? Mediocrity is not our thing. We are now going to be the industry leaders, and nothing except the top position will satisfy us. And so that's how. And then you're right. At every major interaction point at Slack, we land a deal. I remind people about what the mission that we are after. We lose a deal. I remind people to learn from that, right? What didn't work. At every customer win, we celebrate it with cake. The CSM who has delivered it will celebrate his accomplishment. We make sure that every point we can celebrate, we celebrate, so that the positive momentum goes with the culture. And every negative, it's not looked at, or every failure, it's not looked at with negativity, but it's looked at as a learning opportunity.
And how do you, I mean, I love all that, and in the EOE, and also insanely great. How do you make sure? I mean, like, this is stuff that I'd say a lot of people would say, okay, it's in some ways the same as those posters that people used to put up in like an HR office or something. When people go, like, here's a positive quote, and please like think about this, and yet people would still grumble about their job or being happy. How else do you make sure people are like? How do you track? Are you really bringing positive energy? Are you really experimenting on a regular basis? Are you really truly being insanely great? Because once again, all those things sound good, and I certainly agree with them. But how do you actually track that? And do you say to people, hey, like, you aren't being insanely great. I don't see you experimenting. Do you let those people go? Is that the end of their employment? And like, what do you do to reinforce that mentality?
One thing is by using real life example and citing example of people who are walking the talk. And so I'll give you examples. So I asked everybody at Lumber to think about leveraging AI in every process in the company. Think about anything that we are doing manually today can be done in an agentic way. And then we declared a competition. So every all hands, we highlight all the entries that the management team have received, and we award for the top 3 ideas.
What do you award? A cash prize, or how do you do an award?
It's a cash prize. It could be the recent New York bestseller book, or it could be any other.
Every quarter, every month.
So we have an all hands every month. So we track this. AI right now, we want to be an AI first company, so we track that passionately, and that's why we track that on a monthly basis.
So you track every submission. Does everyone have to submit something, or it's just whoever submits it?
Whoever submits it, but every all hands, as all the employees see the entries coming in, as they see it being applauded, they get encouraged to submit more. So we have seen a progressive increase in the entries with every all hands.
All right. I mean, we've tried to do something similar. I would say it's been mixed, where people are submitting stuff and actually talking through things. So maybe this is something we should try. But it's okay. So it's in your all hands. Like, is this the way you're celebrating? Like, once again, do you let people go if they aren't insanely great? I mean, like, what do you do to say, like, hey, look, maybe this isn't a fit for you?
Yeah. So one other thing that we track is how an employee has improved over a period of time. And if somebody has made rapid strides in improving how they are delivering outcomes, we highlight that. That again happens either in the all hands or in the Slack channel, right? Because sometimes you may not track and remember it in the all hands. So we try to give that message on a more frequent basis. And then if somebody is not performing well, somebody with repeated encouragement, mentorship is not advancing well, then Adam, it's better for the resource candidate, and it's better for us that we part ways. And we will explain what's not working, and then I personally offer any assistance I can to move the career forward, but we'll part ways.
How quickly do you do that usually?
So again, you can see that I've inspired a big deal from Frank Slootman. Frank Slootman said that I've never fired anyone early. So, which means by the time you realize that you have to part ways, it's always late. So as soon as we are now more conscious that as soon as we determine that this is not a good fit, we should part ways. Yeah. So I'm encouraging this culture in the team that, listen, guys, everybody uh, cannot meet the challenge, or it's not for everybody, and we should come to that conclusion faster. It's better for everybody.
What do you think about one thing we're considering doing actually at Chore, my company, is offering people, and I know some other companies have tried doing this, where we offer them like $1,000 or something to leave within the first week or two and say, like, pretty quickly, I think people have a good idea if it's a fit or not a fit. It takes maybe a little bit longer for a company to understand it about a person, but usually within the first 2 weeks, you'll know someone like, are they insanely great or aren't they? And they might know too, like, hey, this just isn't the right culture for me. I don't understand the work that's being done here, whatever it is. We're considering actually offering people money and saying, hey, if this isn't a fit and you realize it within the first 2 weeks, let us know. We'll pay you $1,000 to leave, maybe even more than that. I don't know.
That's a fantastic idea, Adam. Not thought about it, but definitely will consider it.
Yeah.
One of the tactics that we have done is when we are not sure about somebody, when somebody has not come through a strong referral, generally when a candidate has been referred by somebody in your network, they have worked with him, that carries a lot of weightage. But when somebody we meet in cold, we encourage to, before we start a full-time employment, we encourage a 3-month contractor relationship. That way it gives time for the candidate to assess the culture of the company, whether it's a fit, and gives us time to assess the candidate as well.
And does that work well enough in your mind too? Like, I've seen other companies do this sort of like a probationary period, basically. And you find that works decently well?
That has actually worked well for us, because 3 months is a good time to understand if the candidate has a long-term potential, how much the candidate is capable of learning.
Why do you make it a probationary? So this, given you're in the work that Lumber does, this is kind of very inside baseball for people for a second, but I'm curious, why make it a contractor relationship with the person instead of just saying it's a probationary period, just FYI, and essentially we might let you go in 3 months. It might not be a fit. Like, what's the technical reason why you make it a contractor versus hiring someone full-time but probationary?
No, actually, it depends on the candidate's choice. We offer both. Actually.
Oh, interesting. Is there any pros or cons to anybody? Like, why would a candidate choose contractor?
The candidates or the resources prefer the contractor because it's more flexible for them and it's cleaner for them. I think that's,
interesting. So
their mindset.
So, okay, let's talk briefly a little bit about, since we've kind of been in this cultural focus, skipping ahead to many things that I like to ask, but let's talk briefly about hiring. So what are some of your secrets to hiring, finding the right candidates? You've done, I don't know, you've probably hired a few hundred people in your career at this point, at least. What are the key secrets to hiring the right people? How do you identify if someone's a fit? And what's your actual hit rate? Like, in other words, you might say, yes, I want to hire this person, and then they don't work out, right? So you're obviously, no one's perfect. So what's your general sort of hit rate on like your success rate? And what are some of the key questions, interview questions, things you look for that really help you or have helped you become a better kind of hirer than you used to be?
Yeah, so I've realized now as a founder, it's all about hiring good people.
Yeah.
First startup that I did, Adam, it was all about me. It was me being in the central workflow, monitoring everybody. Today, at Lumber, it's all about the team. Mm-hmm. They are running the company, and my job is to think about the future, 1 year ahead, what happens, right? So hiring good people is really, really important, and that's should be CEO's priority number one. And as I mentioned, the process that has worked really well for me is to date a candidate, especially for the positions that are reporting directly to me, because they need to be MVPs in a company, and I need to hire the best possible candidates. Mm-hmm. Now, hit rate has been very high at Lumber, and our retention rate has also been really high, and the people have stayed for we have rarely have had some person quit the job, and that's because the initial set of hires came either from my previous startups that I had started, or company where I've been investing or advising. Mm-hmm. And and I have I think done a good job in maintaining a notebook whenever I come across a top performer in any company that I interact. or in any setting, I actually have written down. And these are not only just engineering folks, these are sales ops, um, these are marketing ops, the customer success ops, the folks who make sure that the nuts and bolts of that operations are done well.
Yeah, no, it's funny.
And
You're only after about 100 episodes, you're only the second person who said that they do that. I know one other person I interviewed, Christina, said she kept a list of the top people that she met along the way that she would recruit at any point if she had an opportunity. And she sort of just kept in touch with those people, just see if they were ever looking, they're thinking about doing something different. So I think that's a rare thing, and it's something probably more founders should do well. It's like, yep, this person seems awesome. I'm going to stay in touch with them.
Yeah. And one other thing, Adam, in this list, I also tagged them for the scale of the company. Like,
wow. Okay.
a certain candidate is a great sales ops person after we reach 50 million in revenue. Right. So that's the context I put in there. And it's really important because, when you have not done that scale, you don't know how to go about. You have to learn. Learning takes time. And if somebody has already done that scale and knows, it's easier to be up and running fast. And at Lumber, we believe in incredible velocity, moving fast. And so that's really important. That's why that additional context helps.
Yeah, I know it helps. So okay, what questions do you ask to try, if you haven't met the person before, right? You haven't worked with them before, come through some connection. What do you like to do to try to identify that someone's going to be a great fit? Are there questions, characteristics you notice to have some great people on your early entrepreneurial journey?
For me, what helps is actually showing up to the interview, doing homework before. And the homework is basically studying the resume, understanding the journey, studying the LinkedIn profile, looking at who they are connected with, and then showing up at the interview and telling the candidate, saying, I know all your resume, we'll come to your resume, we'll come to your career, but talk to me about your childhood, as I had said earlier, right? Talk to me about, like, while growing up, why did you end up going to the school where you went, your academic journey. Talk to me about your influences. Talk to me about your hobbies. Talk to me whether you're an extrovert, introvert, and what shaped you, what made you. And so that gives a lot of things that I would miss out if I was just focused on their professional career.
What are you looking for them to say when they talk through what shaped them? Like, are there keywords, experiences, things you're looking for? I mean, obviously everyone had a childhood. So it's not just to learn more about them as an individual. You're probably looking for something. So what are you looking for to understand about that person?
Yeah, what I'm looking for is signals that shows that they are proactive, that they're all about learning, like they have a learning mindset. Those two are the most critical things. So if they show progressive growth in their journey, and I don't generally care about the school that they went. If they went to good school, it shows that they have a strong discipline. Yes, sure. But if they didn't go to good school, but they are showing, strong learning attitude, I didn't go to good school, but once I started in my journey, career, started working, I was like, how can I do better? How can I earn more? How can I learn more? How can I be more proficient in what I'm doing? That's something that I really look for. The other thing I look for is extrovert, introvert is really important, right? In some jobs, including sales, marketing, for me, relationship building is really important. So if you're an introvert, generally, then relationship building becomes a challenge.
Yep. How do you identify if someone's an introvert from the interview?
How strong is their network? If they like to go out, generally, if they have a sports background, they are more extrovert. That's important, right? Because playing sports also inculcates in you the importance of team building. Mm-hmm. So that, again, is an important attribute to have. And then if you are good with reading books, that shows a learning mindset as well. So those are the
one of the questions I used to ask. I probably should bring it back. I do this for anyone I interview who's going to be working directly with me, but not with all candidates. I interview everyone at Shore right now. But I would say, what books have you read most recently?
Yeah.
And then I actually also want to ask people what tabs they have open on their computer. So what are they looking at right now? I'm kind of curious. What do they have open and why? In how they think through things. So, okay, so you're looking for proactivity and learning mindset. And okay, so that makes sense. So let's walk through a little bit back to your history, right? How did you end up becoming an entrepreneur, right? This was founding of Lead Formix. Is that the first company?
Yeah.
What spark were you like, okay, I'm going to go from your sort of your early work days out of college? At what point did you say, okay, I think I have the ability and skills to go build a company and do something different? Like what about your background got you there?
Yeah. So I think I always had an eye for business, right from my childhood. A lot in my family have been in restaurant business. So I've seen them, and it's a grind, as you know. Building and running and managing a restaurant is a grind. And so the desire to be an entrepreneur founder was there very early on. And what truly helped me become what I where I'm now is coming to the Silicon Valley.
Okay.
So I was fortunate here to land here in California, and at that time I was thinking about working hard for others and building their startup. And again, very early on in my Silicon Valley journey, I got to be in the early team at Yodlee, and this was the .com time and the gold rush movement in the valley.
100%.
And every fourth person I was meeting at back then, Adam, had an idea, right? And so that was very inspirational. Yodlee, the energy we had, we were backed by Axel Sequoia, and we were the innovators in fintech. The brand value was really high.
You were like played. Yodlee was sort of the early played, right? Played.
That's right. We were doing fintech when internet banking had just started, so it was that early. And so we had amazing folks at Yodlee, so everybody was inspirational. And at that time, Google was also taking off, right? So I could see a company that didn't exist before paving the way, becoming the one of the biggest companies that it is today. It was also the time when Steve Jobs was had started embarking on building beautiful things.
Yeah.
And so that all those inspirations went a long way in shaping me.
But still, okay, so let's actually do the same exercise you do with candidates. Tell me a little bit more about your childhood. Like okay, fine. Your family was in restaurants. You grew up in India. Where in India did you grow up? What still, like, how did all your early childhood elements shape you to say, I'm going to go move to Silicon Valley? You could have gone a million different paths. Like, what about your early childhood brought you out here? What was it with your family, your parents, your siblings that got you to this place?
Yeah, so I grew up in Delhi, which is the capital of India. Grew up in a middle-class family where things were never in abundance. Things were less. So the path forward was get educated well and work hard to build your career. So, and I think,
had any of your relatives gone, like, was college a thing that everyone had done, or was that like, had your parents been to college, all of that?
Yes, yeah. So I was fortunate that my father had completed his education. My mother was a housewife. She had not. She had done high school, but not beyond that. My father came from a truly lot of poverty, and there was a lot of pressure for him to leave high school and get into working profession. And he somehow persisted, got trained in CPA, and became a financial professional. And he was an amazing person. Worked till he was 82, and then he retired. And he was really influential in shaping my world for sure. Understanding that you should never give up. Persistence, be patient. Education is important. Working hard is important. Being disciplined is important. So all of those attributes came from him. deciding that I need to come to Silicon Valley, Adam, back when computers was just starting up, Silicon Valley seemed to be the only place to go to. I had a choice to either go to Australia or come to California in US.
And you say you had the choice. You got job offers from a company in the US and Silicon Valley and a company in Australia.
That's right. That's right. And for a minute, I did think that Australia seems, everybody is moving to US. Maybe I should be different. Go to Australia and learn surfing. But but I think sanity prevailed, and all the innovation related to software and computers was happening here.
Absolutely.
Microsoft was a big name. They were in Seattle, but as I said, the early Intel, your HPs, all of that.
And were you just a hardworking student? Like what even made you graduated with, I don't know how many other hundreds of thousands of people in India who are graduating college at the same time as you. What made you one of the few who, there's only a small percentage who make it over to outside of India, right? Even today, I mean, forget the political stuff right now, and it's even harder to make it into the US. But even before all the political stuff, there's still only a small percentage of people who come from all around the world, well-educated, to start in careers. What made you different than your peers?
Yeah, so Adam, I would say, for any human being to leave to come out of their comfort zone, to leave what they have grown up with, to leave a culture that they are comfortable with, you need to be proactive. You need to be the one who's seeking out better life. And so in India, at my time when I was growing up, the economy in India was not what it is today. It was tough, right? So US actually seemed truly a dream for all of us. And few of us who put in the hours needed to get quality education, discipline, we are the ones who made it to US. And so I would attribute it nothing but, seeing that dream and working hard towards that dream.
Yeah. No.
And then the opportunity, if you're working hard towards a dream, the opportunity present itself.
I totally agree. I think this isn't a political podcast, but in this sense, my politics are very clear, where I think America is absolutely enriched by all of the amazing entrepreneurs and hardworking individuals who come over here. Not in every case. There's obviously some issues there too, but anyone who's well educated, who wants to come here to build companies, be part of companies that are building new things, that have obviously a job option when they come here. To me, that's a no-brainer, right? America, clearly, look at all of our top companies. Essentially, almost all of them are founded and or run by immigrants or second-generation immigrant families. Because you have to work that much harder, you have to be that much better, right? You probably had forms of there's a variety of different hardships that, as a native-born American like myself, I can't even imagine what you had to go through in when you were growing up in Delhi, and then to think you're going to leave it all behind and fly, a long flight. I'm going to India later this year, and it's a long, long trip. It's a long trip to come over here, and you're far away from family and friends and everything and time to go start this. So, and that's what I do think one of the more positive things about the immigrants who come here and really help build amazing things for our country.
Yeah, and Adam, I will say one more thing. By the way, when I first came to US, it was a 48-hour trip. The flight got delayed, so I ended up, having a 56-hour flight.
Oh my gosh.
With my decision. But when any immigrant comes to Bay Area, California, where do they first visit? What's the first place they see? It's Golden Gate, right? All of us go to Golden Gate, and when we see that, what's the impression that we have? That look at this engineering marvel. Think about the time it was built. How has it been built? You walk on that bridge, you look at the nuts and bolts of that bridge, and you wonder how they have been scaled to that way, right? So that's the inspiration that Bay Area, California leaves you with.
I gave a talk last week to early founders, and I said, you need to come to the Bay Area for all those same reasons, because it's the place where dreams get made and you can build new things. So speaking of that, like, okay, so great, you're an immigrant founder, you're an immigrant making it here to the US, working for these cool tech companies, Yodlee in this case, things are growing well. But then you take the next big step and you say, I'm going to go and actually be a founder myself, right? So it's one thing to say, okay, I'm moving to the US, leaving my family behind, all that for a good job in the United States and good money and everything else. And that's already hard. That's already a big step for a lot of people. What made you then decide to take the next big step and say, okay, I'm going to get rid of this safety of this nice company that's growing well, and I'm going to go start my own company doing something totally new? Like that's an even bigger step, which many native-born Americans never even take. So why did you take that step?
Yeah. So Adam, humans generally are great in seeing things in a linear way, that is in sequential way.
Correct.
And human brains find it very difficult to think about things in an exponential way.
Very different. There's a debate I have with people when it comes to AI. They have real issues with the idea of the exponential rate of AI, but continue. I'll stop it there a little bit, but yes, totally agree.
And so, as I said, initially it was all about working hard, building somebody else's dream, and you doubt whether you have capability to come out with an idea. The notion about becoming an entrepreneur is very glamorous, and I was also, as I said, I dreamed of becoming a founder. But initially I was thinking about working hard and moving up the hierarchy chain and being an executive at some point in time. But then you start going into these meetings in startup discussions. You're with the board members. At Yodlee, I presented to the board members, and the encouragement that I got, then you're starting to think, hey, I can think about ideas. I can contribute to ideas, if not think about fresh ideas. And then after some time, it evolved to, hey, I can think about ideas as well.
Yep.
And once you start thinking about ideas, you're like, you want to benchmark it. You want to understand whether it's strong idea or not or a weak idea. So I thought about ideas, and then I started meeting other founders and started talking about it and started watching out for the reactions. And then it soon went to a time when people started saying, hey, that's a good idea. And that's when your confidence starts building up. And then I started meeting with investors, started recruiting for a co-founder, and was very fortunate that with the Yodlee founder, I started Lead Formix.
So it was one of the Yodlee founders who started with you. So he saw in you, he said, okay, clearly Shreesha is somebody who is like really good, and I want to start a company with him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Yodlee had such a massive influence. We still have 8 people from Yodlee over at Lumber.
Wow. I mean, and this was from 2000, like 98, 2000?
Yeah, 98, 99 time. I'm talking about that time frame. I was always, being part of the early team, I was working hand in hand with the Yodlee founders. We were always bouncing off ideas and all of that. So it was natural for us to team up.
Yep.
And it was not about them seeing the potential. I think the potential was there early on when I jumped into the early founding team at Yodlee. It was about, what's that big idea that we can work together? So we kept that debate over for 3 years, and then we came to a point where we said, this is it. This is the idea that we can take to the next level.
So why did you think Lead Formix? And they were marketing automation, right? So why was that an idea coming from financial back end, basically, to marketing automation? Why was that something you thought you had any knowledge about?
Yeah, so this was, Adam, if you recall, marketing in old days was always treated as an art, never a science, right? So you generally had your CMOs or marketing leaders either great in content writing, or they come from the ad world. They knew how to produce advertisements, right? That was the thing. And then we, after Yodlee, in order to be a better entrepreneur, Adam, I decided to, at Yodlee, I was managing engineering and services. So decided to embrace sales in order to be a better entrepreneur. And so I went and did a sales stint before I started Lead Formix.
Really? Okay. We mean just went to a different company, became a salesperson there?
That's right.
Did they know that you were thinking of starting a company? Because you didn't have a traditional salesperson background.
Yeah, no. So this is again, I was lucky, and you need all the luck you can get in different points in life. After Yodlee, I met this team from Microsoft. So Eric Engstrom and Swain Porter, who were, Eric was a general manager at Microsoft. They were coming out, building a company, and they themselves were a dreamer, and they were ready to take chance with other folks who dreamed big. And so they understood that I came from a strong product founding team background, and they were ready to take a chance on me in terms of sales. And I wanted to learn everything that's there in sales. Started from cold calling. I didn't wanted to be this high executive who is managing a sales team. And I offered them that I want to start with cold calling. And I still remember the first cold call that I made. And I'll tell you, Adam, the first cold call that I made, I was hoping that it goes to voicemail. The person actually picked up the phone and I froze. I didn't know what to say, right? So gone through that, all of that experience. And again, that strengthened my resolve to start Leadformix. And again,
Did you, sorry, before you interrupt, I love the sales thing here for a second. What did you start? Did you do the sales because you knew you wanted to do something like Leadformix? Or did you go into sales because you said, for me to be a well-rounded founder, I just need to understand sales. And so I want to go get that experience. Like, which was it? Or maybe both?
The latter.
Okay. You're just like, I want to become a better entrepreneur, better employee, basically. And like, I need to learn sales because that's a key part of.
Absolutely. And I realized that sales is really important for building a large company.
Yeah.
And back in that time, today, a lot of product leaders are celebrated and they become CEOs. But I'm talking about early 2000, where almost 90% of the CEOs were from sales background.
I think even today, I would actually argue having a good sales background or sales or good marketing background is a critical component for most companies still. The ability to sell, so many founders look down on it. And yet it's sort of like, oh, that's like the used car salesman. I don't like want to be like that person. I'm going to do the high level strategic product building stuff. And it's like, no, you need to get your hands dirty by figuring out how to get people to buy your product.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Adam, at Yodlee, I'll tell you, when I was managing engineering and services, I used to curse the salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
I used to curse them because they would bring customers who would demand customization, who would not take the product as it is. And as an engineering person, you're saying, why in the hell did they do this deal? Right? This is so much additional work. And so that actually, when I was thinking about doing my own, I was like, I need to understand that mindset. I need to become a salesperson myself. That was the other drive that compelled me to go in that role.
I love that. So, okay, so you go in that role, figure out how to do sales, then start Leadformix. What was the quick history of Leadformix? How big did it get? Where did it lead to?
Yeah, so Leadformix, again, we saw the shift between marketing move from art to science. And we said, okay, if there is bytes involved, then there is a software needed there. That was the inspiration. And I think a year before we started, Marketo had started. And I think 3 years prior, Eloqua had started.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I want to highlight that because Marketo was a beast at that time, right? They did incredibly well. They sold the vision well. Still, I'm good friends with the founders, John Miller, Phil Fernandez. So we saw, the whole environment was set for marketing automation platforms to go mainstream, and we rode the wave to some extent. We got SAP as our customer. So SAP, large enterprise it is, came on our platform, and I would say we were consumed in making SAP successful because it was your marquee account, one big account.
Yeah, I mean, that's even worth millions of dollars. Like, why did SAP choose you guys? Like, you're a small company. Why did they choose you?
I think we just found the right leader there who believed in the vision that we had. And I made so many Waldorf trips that I could speak little bit of German myself, right? That many trips it took.
So basically you wanted it more than the Marketo or Eloqua sales guys did. You wanted it more.
Because Marketo was killing it. Eloqua was the incumbent.
Yeah.
And so for us, we viewed SAP as a potential channel partner in future that could help us compete with these beasts, marketing beasts who had raised so much dollars. And so so that's the route. And then SAP expressed a desire to acquire us. But as you know, SAP moves slowly. And even before they had sealed the deal, Calidus came about. Calidus said, we will move fast. So that deal happened in like 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, over Christmas and New Year, Calidus made it happen. And 2012, we were acquired. And, it's ironic that we were the folks who introduced Calidus to SAP, and eventually SAP ended up acquiring Calidus.
So, Roll, they got 2 sales. How many years from founding to exit was it for you?
Yeah, so it was about 3.5 years from founding to exit. And, we saw Marketo was trailblazing. They were innovating. They were executing really well. So for me, you talked about the founder fit journey. And so for me, there are different phases, what I call, you start with market fit, then you move on to product market fit, then you move on to go-to-market fit, and then you move on to scale fit. If as a founder you're finding it scaling is really hard, then you need to think about the exit. So because SAP were consuming a lot of our time, it was clear that an acquisition by SAP made sense. But because they were moving slowly and Calidus showed a lot of energy, and I'm still really good friends with Rory Cameron, who did that acquisition, and he just wanted the deal to happen, and he said, I'll move faster than anybody else, and it was a natural outcome.
I mean, it sounds like, I don't know if this was their plan, but it was their plan, like, let's get you, they were like, let's hire purchase you guys, and that might lead to SAP acquiring us, and sort of, was it just a smart 3D chess sort of play on their part?
No, today it looks deliberate, but it was accidental, Adam. Their goal was like, we are focused on, and Calidus, again, that was a company where it was being turned around. It started before cloud, and then the CEO made the big decision that we will move into cloud. Some customers may leave, so be it. And remember, this was happening while we were going through the mortgage crisis, around 2008 time period. And so, a lot of things needed to come together, and I think it all came together. As I said, founder also needs to be lucky.
How did the Calidus team know you? Like, what did you do to make sure you were on their radar in the first place? Because that's where you have to kind of be in someone's radar for them to even know you exist as an option.
This is something that I think happened accidentally at that time, but today I encourage all the founders that I've invested in to keep thinking about it. Is all the players in your ecosystem, you need to proactively be meeting them. One, it gives you knowledge what's happening in the industry. Second, it starts building relationship. Some of the relationships can lead to acquisitions.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, we were obviously close to SAP, but that also led us to look at additional channels who would potentially take Leadformix to other buyers, and that included NetSuite, that included Calidus Cloud. So I started proactively meeting them, but started building relationships.
You just would reach out on LinkedIn, like, hey, I saw you, or you'd have a friend who knew them and just say, I want to grab a coffee, love what you're building.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I was proactive, reaching out on LinkedIn or leveraging my network to make this connection happen. In this case, it was NetSuite who introduced us to Calidus Cloud. Because Calidus Cloud were also on NetSuite marketplace. We were there. And then we started talking to Calidus Cloud. And it all came together.
Okay, so you're now go to Calidus Cloud, then acquired by SAP. How long did all that happen? And then when did you decide, hey, it's time to go? I got the itch again. I'm going to go start a new company.
Yeah, so at Calidus Cloud, I spent more than 3 years. So I did give my share of time Yeah, earn out. And then I was a general manager. I was part of the management team. So we were accomplishing that seismic shift from going from on premise to cloud. So there was a sense of accomplishment that was pervasive throughout that journey.
Mhm.
So that was happening. So I was enjoying my time, and as I said, I learned from the team a lot. And so uh, towards the end, the itch is always there. Adam, once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur. And so I was thinking, whatever we did with Leadformix, which is the journey of a lead to a customer, right? We did that. Marketing automation is a journey from lead to customer. How about if we take it further along from a customer to successful customer?
Mhm.
That's how staying in that buyer's journey or customer's journey, that's how the idea started about customer success. And I felt like you have applied automation to the previous customer journey, how to move forward in that customer journey and apply this automation tactics or techniques to taking a customer from a customer to a successful customer,
Mhm.
happy customer. And that's how the idea about strike deck came about. And again, it was one of my colleagues in Calidus Cloud, Christine Dorian, uh, and we were talking about, and we came up with the name Strike Deck, which was, strike the deck hard to make things happen. And that's the salesperson's world, a CSM, customer success salesperson's world. And that's how we came up with that name together. So, credit to Calidus Cloud in a lot of different ways.
And then so you said, okay, then you leave, you start Strike Deck. How long were you at Strike Deck? What were the outcomes there?
Again, Strike Deck, we were competing with Gainsight.
Yeah, it really created the customer success industry. Like
Absolutely.
Meta, that whole group made that whole industry.
Absolutely. And Gainsight and Nick were executing really well.
Yeah, makes a great
They
expert.
created this movement. Everybody wanted to be part of this new movement of called customer success. Why? Because it sounded more proactive, more action oriented than customer support. Customer support was very passive word, right? And so there was this momentum being generated by Gainsight. They were doing really well. And I had heard a few rumblings about Gainsight, so that was that was like I can create a better platform than them. That was the ambition. We started working on that, and then as it happened, when I was doing Strike Deck, we were again looking for multiple channel partners, and so at that time, I was thinking about going to partners who are not in bed with Gainsight, right? Um, who are paving their own path. So the three players at that time I reached out to. One was Pendo, which does product analytics. They seemed like a natural partner. We could go to the market together. That was the vision there. Then segment.com that got purchased by Twilio. So we built a component piece in their marketplace. They promoted us. And then Medallia for enterprise. And so the idea was that they have enterprise customers. B2B was not as strong as B2C. So the idea was that Strike Deck could be their B2B platform. And so we found the relationships. We started working with their sales team. With Medallia, they said, listen, we don't know whether you are ready for enterprise. You are dealing with a lot of SMBs. Why don't you first showcase it with our own data? Why don't you ingest our data and stand up the platform and pro- uh, prove to us that you can ingest that massive data?
Yep.
And so when we did that successfully, that's when they reached out. They said, like, listen, there could be more than channel partnership here. Are you ready to talk? And this goes back again, at that time, had understood more about how big the market can be, how Gainsight was doing, and with all that going in, we went and initiated the discussion with Medallia, and I got excited by that vision. I got excited by the fact that the going IPO, going public, is in the roadmap.
How did you build? So Medallia, they make you an offer. You obviously say yes to the acquisition. How long from founding to acquisition was that?
That was about 3 years.
Okay, about 3 years.
From founding to execution.
And what do you think it is with your product building? Like, what did you do with product? Both times, 3 years, you get a product that's good enough that you have some big companies who want to acquire you. What are your secrets to building those products?
Yeah, so Adam, coming from the engineering background, having led engineering team, I think the product building is something that comes more natural to us. So, the secret is having a good team that understands how to build product fast. The secret is also how to have design partners and work with them in a collaborative fashion, so that you're not building in vacuum, you're building what customer needs. I think that has differentiated or been the secret sauce both in Leadformix and later in StrikeDeck. And that I have reinforced in multiple ways, amplified that, scaled it at Lumber.
And so in a sense, the idea of a design partner, let me try to define it and tell me where I got this wrong. For you, the design partner is, I want to get in touch with all these potential customers, basically, of this future product, get them on board to help us design it basically for free. They give you advice. They like to be involved. It's sort of fun for them. They maybe get access to some cool new product. It's almost like a way of pre-selling these potential customers, but also, of course, building what the customer wants. Is that how you would define a design partner? And so like your job then as the CEO is, I want to go identify the top 30, 50, 100 design partners and get to know all of them.
Absolutely. You nailed it, Adam. So that's exactly it. So from day minus 60 is when I start reaching out to understand who in my network can help us get design partners.
When you say day minus 60 to what?
Minus 60 to actually starting the company, incorporating the company.
So even before you've incorporated, you're just saying, I want to see if there's a bunch of design partners that I can find and get in touch with who would be good to build this with.
Correct. Now, at Lumber, I did few things differently because of all the background, and I can talk more about that. But Leadformix and StrikeDeck, it was hand-to-hand combat, which is basically comb your LinkedIn, reach out to all your network, ask them help selfishly. It's really important for every founder. Selfish is not the right word, shamelessly, I would say, right? The founders, you should have no embarrassment, no hiccup in accepting help, right? It's a tough world for founders. You have to be shameless from that. So be proactive. I've reached out, whatever it takes, right? Beg them, encourage them, use your goodwill, whatever it takes to
right. You have to do what founders would always get is you have to do whatever it takes to get your company, make your company success. There's no shame in that.
Absolutely.
You should push.
I want to point out at Lumber, and this is something that I tried new and it really helped me. So that's why I want to share this insight with all the founders. At Lumber, what I did, Adam, was on my payroll, I hired an SDR. And I asked SDR to set up 200 meetings with construction firms, small and big. And this is the reason is I wanted to validate whether I'm not drinking my own Kool-Aid and there really exists a need. But when I was doing all these interviews, I could understand just from the passion in the other person's voice who could be a potential good design partner.
Yeah.
Who is forthcoming in sharing beyond what is required.
And that SDR though was doing it not, and he was part of why probably he was able to set up lots of meetings is because it wasn't a sales pitch. It was like, we're curious to learn more, right? People are much more willing to get on a call when they think I'm here to help, not to get sold to.
Absolutely. And so the incentives that we set was like, listen, we are going to publish an industry report. So whatever you're seeing will go into the industry report, and that will be your contribution to the industry. So we appeared to that passion of that person. Some few people we also offered $100 gift card for spending 1 hour with $50 or $100 card for spending that quality time with us. And few of the folks who are really passionate, we went back to them for an additional hour because we wanted to capture everything that they had to share.
Yeah. I like that idea. So it's a great something more people should do more of. The company then sells 3 years later. You built a product that people love. What then happened with that exit? So how long are you at the acquiring company before you say I'm going to go do lumber?
Medallia was magical,
Why?
Adam, in multiple ways. First is fortunate to have been part of the larger team when we went public.
Yeah.
So going public in New York Stock Exchange is a goosebump event. And so it was magical from that perspective.
And you were part of the senior team. So were you there in New York for that? Were you a senior enough individual?
Yeah, as part of the team. So it was, as I said, like I could see my CEO, CFO preparing for the road show, getting interviewed. All of that was really, again, inspirational. My CEO at Medallia, Leslie Stretch, who is a big inspirational figure for me, and CFO Roxanne, who I'm still in touch with. I've learned so much from them, looking at them, how they went about, how they scaled up, leveled up. Because I remember back when I started with Medallia, there were a lot of people who didn't think Medallia had the wherewithal to go public.
Really?
That fast way. Because Medallia had been around for such a long time. They were doing well. There was the brand name had the pull and power, but not many people had attributed that Medallia had the strength to go public that fast. And so Leslie, Stretch, and Roxanne did an amazing job. And as you know, Sequoia was backing Medallia. Frank Slutman, again, somebody who I had mentioned multiple times, was also on the Medallia board at one point in time. So the exposure that I got in Medallia was really good. And I also understood in Medallia what it takes to build a strong brand.
Mm-hmm.
The first Medallia conference that I attended, I spent all the time with Medallia customers. And we are talking about Home Depots, Comcast, Wells Fargo, you name it, those brands were using Medallia at that time. So spending time with them, talking to them, they were all talking about, not doing just surveys, right? Surveys was means to the end result. But what they talked about themselves as custodians of their brands.
Mm-hmm.
They were there capturing signals from their customers, bringing it all together.
So what do you do to be a custodian? Like, dig into that briefly for a second. When you say being a great custodian of the brand, how do you even create, I mean, this is a larger discussion, but like, how do you create a good brand in the first place, let alone have a brand to be a custodian for?
Yeah. And this one, I can also provide some insights that I took from Medallia and how I have implemented in lumber, which could be helpful,
yeah, please.
Right? So first of all, just let's start with the Medallia, the brand name, right? Medallia word, medal, right? Medal. When do you get a medal? When you do something great.
Mm-hmm.
So Medallia, the brand name itself carried a weight, right? It flows nicely. It has an appeal to it. So that, lumber, when I started lumber, I was like, I need a strong brand name, right? That can be used as a verb. That how you say, slack me the document. So, and I wanted it to be a super successful company. So it should stand in a series of some successful companies. Tinder, Twitter, Uber, lumber, right? That's how the lumber name came. And I visualized saying lumber me the payslip, right? The worker saying. So that's where I learned from Medallia, right? I was a student. When I went into Medallia, I said, I'm a student. I'm going to learn everything about scale, how Medallia came. I'm not going to bask in the glory that I just sold a company to Medallia, right? I'm going to be a student again. And so it started with that brand name, right? Having a strong brand name. Second, it's taking care of your customers more beyond their product, creating a community, right? So if you think about all the customer experience folks in all these big Fortune 500,000, 5,000 companies, they do not get the spotlight. They don't get the limelight. But then Medallia brings them all together, used to bring them all together in this conference called Medallia Experience. Give them the spotlight. Tell them that you guys are doing a phenomenal job for your company.
Mm.
Provide them ways to highlight in their company. That I learned, and today that's why in Lumber we are creating communities. Even though we are a early startup, we are doing 4 events this year, 4 different cities. We did one in Atlanta. We did this weekend in Santa Clara. We are doing in Chicago with ABC Association. We are doing in Phoenix, where I'll be there. So think about a small company attempting to do 4 companies in different cities, right? So that's again something that I learned from Medallia on how to build a big brand. And then early on from Medallia had this different podcasts, different events. And so even at Lumber, we have 2 podcasts that we do. We highlight one. One of them we highlight all about workers. We brought in Builder Facts into fold, which is all about doing working proactively for workers, caring about their well-being by bringing mental wellness into the forefront. So this is all about creating community. A community goes a long way in defining a brand.
Yeah. No, like, how do you find like the team? I mean, sorry, well, I want to be careful when I'm asking you questions here because I have so many different directions to go with things. Just briefly then, like, makes sense, build a community. Why start Lumbar in the first place, right? You did marketing automation, you did customer success. What made you think you were the founder to go build a basically HR payroll company in the construction space? Like, why was that? Even to me, you had the guts to go do, but even more than the guts, you had special knowledge that you could go build something in this industry. Like, why would any investor believe you?
Adam, I came out of Medallia when Thoma Brau took Medallia private. And when I came out, I was like, I have, in a different phase of my life, having done a lot of these startups, invested in startups, have got enough scars on my back, lessons learned. I was like, I need to now go and tackle a tough challenge. I need to go where the industry is big, the impact is bigger. And I started asking, what are the tough challenges out? And I'll credit the senior executive from DPR Construction, one of the biggest construction companies in California. It's also very inspirational, who said, I've been talking to my Silicon Valley colleagues that there is so much to be done in the construction industry, and you guys do not find it glamorous enough to enter into the construction industry. And that actually led me to hire the SDR to go and set up interview with all these companies. And even with these companies, initially I was thinking about solving payment problem because of my yearly background that comes naturally to me. And then every interview I heard how much of a big challenge it is to recruit workers and then keep the workers, retain them, because there's so much demand and construction industry is tough. And that's where I felt like this could be my legacy.
Yeah.
This could be the tough problem I solve and make an impact.
Okay. So that's how you guys started in it. Walk me through in the company now. You have about 100 people on the team, things like that, just growing well. Go to your startup fitness mentality. Like, walk me through what that mindset is. What does that mean? How do you explain that to people? What does that look like, and how are you applying it right now to Lumber?
As I said, my startup fitness journey, what I call, is it starts with market fit. When you are thinking about starting a new company, how big is the market? And at this point in my life, as I said, I wanted to go and tackle something massive. So for me, it was very important that we are going after a massive market. And our vision is that we are going after all the regulated industries that have blue collar workers. We're starting with construction. So that makes the market infinite, right? So market fit is really important. And I'm again, it's not for people who do not have courage, because when you're tackling a big market, massive problem, it also takes years of patience to build a massive company. Yep. Right? So what market works well for you in that particular phase of your life, that's important. Once you go through that, then next is product market fit, which we all know. I will not talk a lot in detail, but whether the product that you're built, does the market need it? You move through that, you then go to market fit, which is the product that you have built, that market wants, can the messaging, the positioning, does it resonate with the market? So that's how I look at go to market fit, right? Because if that works, then you can amplify that, you can scale the demand gen and all of that good stuff that comes with that. And then the last is a scale fit, right? At every point, at every phase, at every milestone, you should ask, can I scale it further? Right? Can I keep going? And if it does not, then you have to think about the other alternatives. Otherwise, you need to go and as I said, insanely great, right? Do not accept mediocrity, keep scaling further.
Yep.
So that's how I look at it. And that's the mantra we are building at Lumber. We are like, speed is our best friend. We need to build at phenomenal scale, right? Don't look at the existing benchmarks. Think about even bigger, higher things.
So how do you deal with, on a day-to-day basis, right? You're starting this new company, Lumber. And then how do you think through the idea of like delegating, moving the bit, like one of the things you mentioned, right, is your job as CEO is to think a year ahead. What's going to happen in the future? So how will you create it? What sort of systems do you put in place, and when do you put them in place to sort of delegate things away? And obviously, this is a slight pet peeve of mine because I think founders are terrible at this, and yet they should always outsource things like back office operations, which we run. But like, how do you think through when you start delegating things away so you can start thinking about the future, long-term focus, or talking to your top-tier customers, or going to these events in different cities? What's your advice there about how does a founder grow into becoming a CEO?
Yeah. Adam, I'm happy to end this with an important insight here. As I have progressed as an entrepreneur founder, today it's all about delegation. For me, it's really important. If you want to scale, you have to delegate. Today, I'm not doing any important work in the company. I'm only thinking about future. That's how I look at it. I've got a strong team that can handle all the functional aspects for the company today. And so it's very important that you bring a team that you trust, that amplify you, that can complete your sentence. Really, really important. If you have big ambition, if you want to scale high, delegation is a thing. And of course, we humans, we believe in ourselves. It's not easy to believe in others, but if you really want to scale, you have to believe in others' abilities. Even if they fail, it should be okay to fail.
So then how do you decide what to, once again, how do you decide what to delegate though, and when to delegate things? Because in the end, people are going to want to keep coming back to the CEO, right? Everyone wants just, I'm going to skip over all the bureaucracy. I'm going to go straight to the CEO to get an answer. And I have customers who ping me because they want to get an answer direct from the CEO, or teammates even who ping me about things because they want an answer from the CEO. How do you move yourself out of that world so you can focus on the future and the things that really only you can do?
Yeah, I had a strong executive team right from the start. I call them all my founding team. And I was very clear with all of them that they are essentially, mini startups within a startup, and they are the leaders and they have to manage. And I made sure that anybody from their team came to me and I mentioned to them, please go and talk to the leader. I'm here to encourage you and my doors are always open, but ultimately the decision will not be made by me. The decision will be made by the leader.
Yeah.
That takes, again, some courage to say that. I know that because you believe in yourself and you're tempted to get into the weeds because you feel like you can do it, but important to trust that leader will do the job. I had a new customer success leader come in, and the first thing that the customer success leaders asked me is to not to comment on the Slack channel with respect to customer. And for me, it was very important to follow the instructions there from the customer success leader.
And it's hard though, I think, right? Because there's a lot of founders who, of course, they know every part of the company. They have all the information. It's hard not to meddle. It's hard to take yourself out of things. So what do you think? I mean, on that note, one of the questions I always like to ask is like, what sort of advice would you give your younger self? Like if you were saying, I'm going to give the younger Shreesha advice, what would it have been? Is it learn how to delegate? Is it learn what would you have done differently given all the accumulated knowledge you have today?
Learn how to delegate.
Okay.
And this is the thing, Adam, younger people will always trust themselves. The delegation thing comes with experience.
Yeah. It's so true in one of those key skill sets that you can't build a good company unless you know how to delegate. That's just not possible. What single piece of advice would you give founders today? If you could give one piece of advice for being an excellent entrepreneur, what would it be?
Not to give up. Because if you do not give up, things will turn around. When you give up, nothing can happen. So I truly feel like if people don't give up, no startup will fail.
Is there ever a point, sorry to push on this a little bit, is there ever a point you do give up? I mean, one could argue, right? One could make an argument that you sold your company twice, very successful exits. But was that you giving up instead of trying to build $1 billion company out of that? You said, okay, I think I'm going to sell. Was that actually giving up just to play devil's advocate?
You're allowed to give up if the scale is not there, what you desire. That for sure. Like if you want a larger scale, your ambition is bigger and this is just not working out, then yeah, absolutely. And you don't have patience, right? Then you give up.
Yep. So true. Is there anything else, one last question, is there anything else that you do for work-life unity or balance or anything else? How do you manage being an entrepreneur, growing all these companies, these new babies, with playing the guitar, which I see you over your shoulder, or spending time with your family? How do you manage to do all of those things and hopefully lead a balanced lifestyle? Or maybe you don't, and that's okay too.
Adam, we had discussed before, I think you're equally passionate about this, which is meditation. Closing your eyes and thinking about the problem goes a long way in maintaining balance. So no matter how hard, tough the problem is, you close your eyes and things will happen.
No, well said. Shreesha, how can people find you if they want to get in touch, learn more about you, what you've built, what you're building at Lumber, or just in general, more of your philosophies on successful outcomes? And I'm no doubt that Lumber is also going to be a hugely successful outcome for you. So how can people learn more?
Thank you, Adam. I'm always available on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way to find me.
Excellent. Shreesha, thank you so much for the time. I sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam.